Hello, people of Earth, and hello, Murray Griffin.
Hello, Franziska Curran, and it's been another big week.
It has indeed. We've got a lot to cover. We've got the opening of a special tank and the
Ooh.
opening of a special nursery, and lots
Whoa.
of big clean energy news, including a special new type of battery, plus some news about reducing waste, and an excellent new study about how we improve water quality in the Great Barrier Reef. But first, this week's quiz question. What do numbats eat? And here's a clue. They only eat one thing. And in case you're wondering what numbats look like, they're about 20 to 25 centimeters long, with a tail that's almost as long, and they have up to 11 white stripes on the fur that runs along their backs. And these stripes are partly camouflage and partly so that they can tell each other apart. And they also have a dark stripe running across their eyes like a bandit.
I like the stripes thing. I can just imagine one numbat looking at another and saying, oh, 4 stripes, that'll be Norman.
I'm imagining it's like a barcode, like beep.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, that's Jerry. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so what's the only thing they eat? Stay tuned to find out. So, moving on to the news, what's your pick of the week, Murray, to kick us off?
Well, there's a trashy journalism saying which goes, if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, if bad things happen, it makes for a good story. I'm going to flip that on its head and say, if it breeds, it leads. And so, yeah, and so
Much nicer.
much nicer. And so my pick of the week is about the release of 17 rufous bettongs, including females with joeys, into the wild on the New South
What?
Wales mid-north
Wonderful.
coast. Yeah, it is wonderful. They've been released into the Ngamba Nature Reserve, which has been made free of feral cats and foxes. And another release into the same reserve is planned. Now, rufous bettongs are about the size of a rabbit, and they're sometimes called the rufous rat kangaroo, which is a bit harsh, but also quite accurate given their appearance, which is a bit like something you'd get if you crossed a very cute-looking rat with a wallaby. And
Aw.
yeah, they
Are we a bit
look
judgmental there against rat kangaroos, Murray? I mean, I don't know if that's harsh, especially not when you frame it as cute-looking.
They are
rat-looking.
they are very cute looking. And the Ngamba Nature Reserve, which is their new home, is one of 10 feral predator-free sites that extend over about 60,000 hectares and are managed by the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service. And here's some audio from a video about the release, featuring Dean Reid of Aussie Ark, which is the amazing organisation that bred and raised the rufous bettongs for their release.
This is Aussie Ark in action. From rescue to recovery to rewilding, we're doing it again, big time. We're collaborating for the first time with New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service to transfer and release 17 endangered rufous bettongs. The bettongs consist of 10 males and 7 females who have been living in our Barrington Tops Wildlife Sanctuary.
So the bettongs will be released into the 2,000 hectare reserve within Numba Nature Reserve. It's within the Numbucca catchment area and it sits about 20 kilometres inland from the township of Southwest Rocks. At the site we had wild dogs, foxes and cats. And we've managed to get that site feral free and really looking forward to reintroducing bettongs back into that landscape.
It was really fantastic and it's sometimes moving to witness all the different ways each bettong embraced its new world. It was truly spectacular to see our Aussie Ark born and bred bettongs bouncing off in their new home.
The work that Aussie Ark's done to establish a population of rufous bettong has just been fantastic. And not only that, the fact that they're partnering up with other stakeholders to set up meta populations around the state to manage rufous bettongs going forward is just fantastic for the species.
And I'm just going to say the audio is really good, but check out the video because seeing these bettongs bound away when they're released is pretty amazing. So we'll put the link in the show notes.
The leap, I cannot. The height, yeah, and you'll see what we mean about cute looking
Yeah,
chubby
absolutely.
rat wallaby. Yeah.
And there's
Yep.
one bettong that honestly, it's Olympics material. It does this
Oh, so
massive
good.
leap as it disappears into the bush.
Also, shout out to the humans in that video as well, because you can just see the joy and passion that they have for what they do, which is lovely.
Yes, exactly. And if you want to find out more about the work that Aussie Arc does, which is pretty extraordinary, go to aussiearc.org.au. So that's my pick of the week, Franziska. And what is yours?
Well, Murray, I don't know why it's taken me 22 episodes to work out that we've got a sort of pattern where you talk about like cute animals, nature, and then I talk about like some industrial one. But I'm on a Newcastle bender for the third time in the last
Whoa.
month,
Yeah.
where there's another industrial cool thing to be located in Newcastle. So the other two involved Orica. Just to recap from a couple of weeks ago, one was a carbon refinery that turns climate polluting CO2 into useful solid carbonates. And the other is the one that will result in Orica using green hydrogen to make ammonia, to help make ammonia. So this one, though, this doesn't involve Orica. It's a company called Green Steel Australia. And Green Steel is going to invest $500 million to build Australia's first new steel mill in over 30 years at Mayfield in Newcastle. The mill will use what's called electric induction furnace technology, replacing fossil gas with clean electricity throughout the process to produce ultra-low emissions steel. And it's expected to be operating in January 2028. And the Mayfield mill is apparently only the beginning. The company tantalizingly says, and I quote, "The location and timeline for phase 2 are coming soon." So I'm not quite sure, that's a bit cheeky.
It's very
Are they talking about
intriguing.
green iron, or am I too optimistic? Anyway, the Mayfield mill will produce up to 600,000 tonnes of near zero emissions steel annually, helping to reduce our reliance on imported steel, and it will employ more than 200 full-time staff. It's an amazing project, and it's no surprise to learn that the chair of Green Steel is Ross Garnaut, who is one of Australia's best-known economists and energy and finance policy strategist. And this is full circle for the Mayfield site because it was originally home to the BHP Newcastle Steelworks. Anyway, that's my pick for the week, Murray, and I don't promise not to mention Newcastle for a week or two, because who knows what's going to
Who
happen
knows?
next
Who
week,
knows what's around the corner? Yes, well, that's a very good choice.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. Now, the red handfish is one of our favourite creatures, isn't it, Franziska?
Murray, that is an understatement. Everyone needs to pause this right now, Google it,
Go-
then come back to us.
yeah, exactly. And make sure you do come back. But yes, do Google
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Uh,
Don't pause. Actually, just do it afterwards. Yeah.
It's a fish that looks a bit like it's got hands, unsurprisingly, given the name. Found in Tasmanian waters, the red handfish is critically endangered because it lives among seagrass, and Tasmania lost nearly a quarter of its seagrass between 1950 and 1990, and those declines have continued. Well, now there's a new project underway at the University of Tasmania to try to turn things around. The university last week opened a new seagrass nursery that will develop new ways to collect and grow seagrass, which can then be used in restoration projects. And if you want to find out more, the Friends of the Red Handfish have a handfish conservation project page on Facebook that tells you all about it. And the page is fantastic. It's got a picture of the nursery with the red ribbon ready to be cut. And it's got another post that talks about what they call, quote, the charismatic spotted handfish.
Oh,
and
amazing.
it's got a photo of work by a local ceramicist who makes ceramic spotted handfish spawning habitat. And I'm just going to say those ceramics look pretty amazing.
Oh, so good. What a good story. You've just taken us through opening of a seagrass nursery in Tasmania. Whereas meanwhile, up in Brisbane, politicians and senior federal and state officials, along with airline executives, have attended the opening of a tank. A very special tank. It's not even a new tank, it's a refurbished tank. But the reason there was so much interest in it is that it's located in Brisbane Airport and it can store sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, as it's often called. Aeroplane engines are fueled by jet fuel, which is basically kerosene, and the fuel releases very powerful climate polluting gases when it's combusted in the aeroplane engines. But this tank, owned and refurbished by petroleum company Viva Energy, will store SAF, which is made from organic waste materials such as used cooking oil. And this SAF can then be blended with standard jet fuel to reduce total aviation emissions. Viva already has runs on the board in helping to develop the use of SAF in Australia. In 2023, it supplied the Royal Australian Air Force Roulettes with SAF for its first public flying demonstration using SAF. It was also involved in a 12-month pilot project supplying SAF to the RAAF base at East Sale.
There's a line there somewhere about a pilot project at a RAF base. But But-
A pilot. Sorry, that took me way too long to get. I was like, oh yeah, short-term oh, good. Very good, Murray. The Brisbane Airport tank refurbishment was carried out with the help of a $2.4 million grant from the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, known as ARENA.
Okay, enough about planes fueled by SAF. Let's talk about electric trucks. The federal government's Clean Energy Finance Corporation, known as the CEFC, is providing a $22 million loan at a discount interest rate to Zenobē Australia to help it buy up to 148 battery electric grocery trucks. It will be the largest rollout of electric trucks in Australia, and they will be leased to Woolworths, which will use them to deliver groceries. The project is a really important one because of the 12,000 trucks sold in Australia to date this year, under 1% have been electric.
Whoa, that is really important. Staying with electric heavy vehicles, and the company that operates about 1/3 of Melbourne's bus network now has an electric bus depot in the Melbourne suburb of Preston. The new Preston depot is the 4th electric bus depot in Victoria, and the bus chargers at Kinetic's Preston depot are pretty special. The chargers are mounted on an overhead gantry that uses cable reels to charge the buses, which saves a lot of space compared to using chargers that are located on the ground. Over the next 10 years, Kinetic says its entire Preston fleet will become zero-emission buses, and all of them will be charged with 100% clean energy supplied by the state government-owned State Electricity Commission. And here's some audio about the Preston depot.
This morning represents a significant milestone for us as we launch our Melbourne Metropolitan Zero Emissions Bus franchise at our new depot here in Preston. This expansion builds on our presence here in Melbourne. We operate over 1/3 of Melbourne's bus network. We've taken on 120 new drivers. We've launched 50 buses, and all here, which is going to be a fully electric depot in the next 10 years.
So this has been a super complex operational launch, but I've been really excited to see the melting pot of cultures and the people that we've welcomed to the depot. We've got drivers from another operator, we've got drivers from Kinetic, we've got new drivers that we've trained up over the last 3 or 4 months. It's been a really smooth transition, and we're really excited to be part of the Preston community now. We've literally built a depot from a lump of dirt through to what we see here today. So this is a revolutionary design that we've installed here at the depot. We've got overhead gantries, the first of its kind in Victoria, and it will allow far more efficient charging and far more efficient use of space within the depot, and it really sets us up for future growth within the business.
And behind me we have something that's even better. An empty depot because all the buses have gone, left on time, providing services across our MZF network.
So let's get into some other clean energy news of the week. And we're going to go now to a clip from a new Surfers for Climate podcast episode featuring Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen. Here's the clip.
I mean, One Nation has announced they will ban wind farms and solar farms. What about the farmers' rights to put what they want on their farm? You know, I support the right of farmers. There's no wind farm or solar farm in Australia that's been put there without the agreement of the landholder. Well, it's not a compulsory thing. And on the contrary, there are plenty of farmers who go, well, farming's pretty tough. Droughts come. What about if I had a source of income in addition to my sheep or cattle income, where I could still farm sheep and cattle, but I could also have this guaranteed income every year, which is a wind farm or a solar farm.
We'll put a link to the episode in the show notes. But 2 things about that clip stood out for me, Franziska.
Tell me about it.
Firstly, that's a really good point that Chris Bowen is making. And
True, agreed.
secondly, why isn't he calling us begging to be unearthed?
My main thought, exactly, Murray. And look, no doubt Surfers for Climate podcast is fantastic,
Yes.
but surely it's just a matter of time. But we're ready for you, Chris.
We
Just
are
go on whenever,
indeed.
whenever
Yes.
you are.
Don't be prejudiced against non-surfers. We care about the climate. We care about the climate too. Okay, let's go on a bit of a batteries binge because there's a lot of news over the past week about batteries. And we're going to start with a special new battery that's going to be built in the Latrobe Valley. The Latrobe Valley has for decades been the coal power station heartland of Victoria, and it's now gradually pivoting to new industries. Now, a company called Energy Dome is going to partner with the Victorian Government's State Electricity Commission to build the state's first battery that will run entirely on CO2 and water. How it works
Whoa.
is that the battery uses excess grid power to compress and store carbon dioxide, and then when the grid is under stress and we need more electricity in the system, it expands the carbon dioxide through a turbine to generate electricity, which is then discharged to the grid. And what's amazing about this unique kind of battery is that it will have the capacity to discharge electricity for up to 10 hours, which is much longer than the standard 4 hours that most big grid batteries can discharge for. The Energy Dome battery is also unusual looking because it actually looks a bit like a long, opaque greenhouse. And if you want to know more, just Google it. In fact, Google itself is so excited about this technology that it's working with Energy Dome to build one of these batteries in Ireland and another one in Arizona. And here's a clip about the technology featuring someone from the State Electricity Commission.
I'm here at the new SEC Energy Works site. We have been here today announcing our partnership with Energy Dome to build a 20 megawatt, 10 to 12 hour compressed carbon dioxide battery system. We're at the very beginning of this project, but it's a really exciting time to be bringing a new technology to Australia to help the energy transition.
Staying with batteries, and we all know there's been a huge uptake of home batteries in the past year. These days, you can't go into a family barbecue without some relative chewing your ear off about how much money they're saving since they put one in. Well, Australia's competition watchdog, called the ACCC, has released new data that quantifies the uptake of home batteries and the average savings that people are getting on their power bills by having a battery. The ACCC says that more than 400,000 batteries have been installed across Australia in the past 12 months.
Amazing.
And it says households with solar and battery systems have annual electricity bills between about $329 and $909 lower than households that don't have solar and battery. There were two more interesting things that the ACCC had to say. Firstly, it said savings were even greater for households with a battery and solar that opt to participate in a virtual power plant. Now, if your household is part of a virtual power plant, basically the company that you are enrolled with will coordinate the operation of your battery and solar with a whole lot of other household batteries and solar systems, so they take full advantage of grid prices at different times. The ACCC says that households in a virtual power plant typically have bills that are $762 to $1,093 cheaper than those without a battery and solar.
But the ACCC says there has also been a rise in complaints about batteries and energy services. And for that reason, it says we need some consumer protection tweaks to make sure households are fully aware of the risks and benefits when they join a virtual power plant. Changes that the ACCC wants to see to deal with these problems include requiring battery sellers and installers to sign up to a code of conduct if they want to be involved in the Cheaper Home Batteries program. So the bottom line here is you can save a lot of money by putting in a battery, but if you do want to put one in, it pays to do your research about the company you're planning to use.
Staying with batteries, in New South Wales, the state's Independent Planning Commission is about to decide whether to improve a grid-scale battery that Ausgrid wants to build in the Sydney suburb of Homebush on an industrial site. So you'd think this project would be a bit of a yawn for everybody, and to some extent it is. When the environmental information for the project was first opened for public comment, only 4 residents who lived within 5 kilometres of the battery site made a submission, and only one of those 4 objected to the project. One of the other 3 was in support, and the other 2 were just comments. As well, there were no objections from the government agencies that made a submission, not Fire and Rescue, nor Sydney Water, nor the New South Wales EPA, or any state government organisation. But when it was open for public comment, there were also 34 objections from people who lived more than 100 kilometres away, and there were another 19 objections from people who lived interstate. And what these objectives have succeeded in doing is slowing down the approval process for this battery, but it's certainly a really interesting thing about who opposes it, whether they're close or far.
Yeah, I think what this highlights is we hear a lot of talk about clean energy projects having to win community trust and give back to local communities, and that's certainly true. But it's also true that there are people and organisations out there that aren't really playing fair and are trying to derail clean energy projects wherever they're being planned, no matter how far these projects are from where these people live. Can I tell you about my favourite ever concern that was expressed about a
Oh,
clean
yeah?
energy project? So this
Go
was
for it.
some time ago, and I read a submission where somebody said that since a wind farm had been put in their area, they'd noticed that it took them a lot longer to assemble flat pack furniture. And and what it made me think was, well, I wonder if I was born near a wind turbine, because I have had trouble with flat
You've
pack
got it.
furniture since
Like ingrained,
forever.
like it's not long now to the answer to our quiz question. What is the only thing that a numbat will eat? And here's another clue. It eats thousands of them a day. Stay tuned for your numbat news. And if you're enjoying this episode, please show your appreciation by following the show. And if you feel like it, give us some stars on your pod listening platform. When Spotify and Apple see stars or YouTube sees a thumbs up, they're more likely to put our pod in front of other people. Okay, so let's talk about nature again. And one way to protect nature is to have what's called a biodiversity credits market. And what these markets do is create biodiversity credits through actions that protect and restore threatened species. Businesses that are undertaking projects that will cause residual harm to nature, for example by clearing threatened vegetation, then buy these biodiversity credits to fund activities that more than compensate for the harm that their own actions are causing. And these credits are supposed to be like for like. In other words, they're supposed to be credits that protect the same species that will be harmed by the business's project. The question is, how well do these biodiversity credit markets work? In New South Wales, every year for the past 3 years, the New South Wales Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal has released a report that attempts to answer that question, and it has just released its latest annual report. The report concludes that the biodiversity credits market has improved over the last 3 years. As at mid-2025, a total of 171 sites have been set aside for permanent conservation, and almost 1 million biodiversity credits have been generated, spanning 255 unique types of biodiversity, including vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered species. But the report also says there are still many developments that have proceeded without the required credits having yet been purchased. And often the credits that are purchased are not like for like and don't protect the species that is being harmed by the developments. The report makes 12 recommendations that it said would help improve the operation of the state's biodiversity credits market. And we'll pop a link to the report in the show notes.
Back to clean energy news, and Squadron Energy, which is owned by iron ore miner Twiggy Forrest, has taken one more step towards getting environmental approval for its Benandra wind farm from the federal government under what's called the EPBC Act. Squadron's environmental impact documentation for the Benandra wind farm, which would be built in southwest New South Wales, has just been released for public comment. The wind farm would have a total capacity of 558 megawatts, which is enough to power just over 300,000 homes, and it would comprise up to 93 turbines. And each year it would avoid the release of 246,000 tonnes of climate-polluting gases, because unlike coal and gas energy projects, a wind farm doesn't release climate pollution. Squadron Energy is a major player in Australia's clean energy industry and has 2 gigawatts of renewable energy projects in operation or under construction. Assuming the project goes ahead, construction will start in 2030. And of course, as well as paying the farmers who have agreed to host the turbines, the company would pay into a community benefits fund to support local community projects.
It's actually been a very big week for Squadron Energy. Not only is environmental information out for its Benandra wind farm in New South Wales, the Victorian government has also released the environment report prepared by Squadron Energy for its Moreton Hill wind farm. The $1.5 billion wind farm will have the capacity to generate around 421 megawatts of renewable energy, which is enough to power around 260,000 homes. The project, which would have 62 turbines and would be located in Victoria's Central Highlands Renewable Energy Zone, is about 35 kilometres from Ballarat. It will also have an associated big battery. Over its 30-year life, the project would generate $200 million in economic stimulus via payments to host landholders and their neighbours, contributions to the local council, and payments to community benefit schemes. It will create 360 construction jobs and 10 full-time jobs once it's operating.
As we've said before, we're big fans of the Climate Change Authority, and Eliza Murray, its Deputy Chief Executive, has recently given a talk to the Pilbara Summit. The Pilbara is in northwestern Western Australia, and it's known for its massive iron ore and LNG industries, which is why the region currently accounts for 41% of Western Australia's climate pollution emissions. It's also known for its amazing Aboriginal rock art, as well as its amazing natural environment. The Pilbara Summit is about industry in the Pilbara, and it's always a sold-out event that attracts hundreds of people and companies. Eliza Murray talked to the summit about the Pilbara's clean energy potential. She said, and this is a quote, that the Pilbara is uniquely positioned to build the next generation of industries, such as low emissions iron, green metals, clean fuels, and industrial decarbonisation services. Eliza said a key issue is to manage various types of project risk so that projects are able to gain momentum quickly and move cost effectively into operation. And she said the Climate Change Authority has been exploring what it takes to get what she calls decarbonisation deals up and running, which might involve companies in several countries, for example, Australia and South Korea. Eliza Murray also mentioned the Australian Renewable Energy Hub that's being proposed for the Pilbara. This is an absolutely extraordinary project. When it's fully complete, the hub will be one of the largest power stations on Earth, comprising wind and solar farms and green hydrogen and green ammonia production facilities, and spreading over 6,500 square kilometres. And it will have the potential to abate around 17 million tonnes of climate pollution annually.
That's epic. Zooming out to the national perspective on clean energy now, the Clean Energy Investor Group represents the companies that build and invest in wind and solar farms and grid batteries, and every year it releases a Clean Energy Outlook report. The latest report is just out, and it's got some mixed news. It says Australia is still seen as an attractive destination to invest in clean energy, but there is a fairly strong view that investment conditions have gotten worse over the past 12 months. And although the government is steadfast in committing to 82% renewable electricity by 2030, investors mostly think that's not going to happen, although the survey didn't ask how close respondents thought the government would get to that target. On a state-by-state basis, New South Wales is seen as the best destination for investment in clean energy. Victoria, on the other hand, has slipped and is viewed as the worst state for transmission build-out. And transmission build-out is now viewed as the biggest challenge facing the industry.
We've talked before about how hard it is to get good data from government sources on how well Queensland is doing in efforts to improve the quality of water flowing off the coast and into the waters of the Great Barrier Reef. Well, now the Australian Marine Conservation Society has released a fantastic report that looks in detail at how these efforts, which get federal and state government funding, are going. And of course, it's an excellent report because one of the three authors is called Franziska.
Oh, with the correct spelling.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Must be a fantastic human.
The report says the Queensland Government has relied on voluntary best management practices programs as a primary tool to get sugarcane growers, banana growers, cattle producers and others to reduce polluted runoff from their farms. But it says these programs haven't had the reach that they should have. And it says the government hasn't made sufficient data available so we can see how effective these programs have been. The report also notes that Queensland introduced reef protection regulations to set minimum standards for reducing nitrogen and sediment pollution from farming activities. But the most recent available data shows 54% of landowners were not compliant with the regulations at first contact. The report calls for the regulations to be strengthened and for better compliance activities.
In addition, the report recommends that the government should allocate more of its water quality funding to catchment restoration, for example, remediating eroded gullies and restoring riverside and streamside vegetation. Currently, less than 6% of the water quality improvement funding goes to these activities.
All right, let's move on to carbon credits and, in particular, carbon credit projects run by First Nations communities. The National Australia Bank has just agreed to buy about 150,000 Australian carbon credit units, known as ACCUs, from a First Nations-owned, not-for-profit carbon farming business over the next 5 years. The business is called Arnhem Landfire Abatement NT, or Alpha NT, and it will earn the carbon credits by taking steps that will result in fewer top-end wildfires, which can release a lot of carbon-polluting gases when they burn vegetation. Arnhem Landfire Abatement NT will carry out low-intensity cultural burns of savanna lands early in the dry season, which in turn leads to less frequent and less intense wildfires later in the dry season. Alpha NT Chief Commercial Officer Adrian Enright said the partnership with NAB is critical to providing long-term certainty for the organisation's activities. Enright said that every dollar from the sale of ACCUs is reinvested into land and cultural management, employing over 300 Indigenous rangers, training and community priorities. And carbon credits are currently trading at well over $30 each. So it's a significant transaction that will bring large economic and social benefits to the Indigenous communities and organisations that are involved in the project.
In Victoria, the state's EPA has just released a new report on waste and resource recovery. The EPA is calling it a circularity report because it's a review of efforts to keep materials circulating through the economy for as long as possible, instead of just using them once and disposing of them. The report shows some improvements in the way that the state handles waste. The state is doing better at keeping organic waste like food and garden materials out of landfills, and it's doing better at capturing climate-polluting methane gas from landfills. As well, it's doing better at managing wastewater from the state's sewage treatment plants. And although Victorians still generate the same amount of waste per person as they did 8 years ago, the amount of that waste ending up in landfills has been reducing since 2021. There's also been an increase in recycling and resource recovery capacity in the state, with quite a bit of this expansion in capacity supported by federal and state government grants. Between 2016 and 2024, Victoria achieved an increase of more than 20% in local material processing capacity, with an additional 1.7 million tonnes processed within the state. Over the same period, the amount of municipal solid waste going to landfill has declined by more than 50%.
These waste improvements in Victoria have an economic benefit as well as environmental benefits. The Circularity Report says Victoria recovered and circulated an estimated $3 billion worth of materials back into the economy in 2023-24, and there's still room to improve. The report estimates materials with a potential value of $1.2 billion are still being lost to landfill each year.
Okay, it's time for our Numbat news, and it's good news too. There is an organisation called the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, that keeps track of threatened animals around the world. And it has just lowered the threat status for numbats from endangered to the lower threat category of near threatened. According to Australia's Threatened Species Commissioner Dr. Fiona Fraser, in the late 1970s, the numbat population declined to only about 300 individuals in Western Australia due to habitat loss and attacks by foxes and feral cats. Since then, long-term control of predators and careful fire management has led to recent increases in the total population, and there are now estimated to be between 2,000 and 3,000 numbats. And that's partly due to a Perth Zoo numbat captive breeding and release program that has bred and released more than 320 numbats into the wild since 1993. As Commissioner Fraser says, this demonstrates that we are making a difference. And as for the answer to our quiz question, numbats only eat, drumroll, termites. They only eat termites, and they eat up to 20,000 of them every day. Isn't that wild?
It is pretty amazing, and they must have a pretty extraordinary termite breeding program at Perth Zoo as well.
Oh my gosh, to be able to feed them, yeah. If you want to find out more about numbouts, and who wouldn't want to find out more, we'll put a link to the information in the show notes.
That's it for today. You're all up to date. Two more people are crucial to making this podcast happen. Sophie Sedaris and the co-founder of the Earth News Service, Chris Dancy. And if you enjoyed this episode, please show your appreciation by following the show. And if you feel like it, give us some stars on your pod listening platform. When Spotify and Apple see stars or YouTube sees a thumbs up, they're more likely to put our pod in front of other people. If you're able to go a step further, you can make a small monthly contribution to help us cover our costs by becoming a supporter via our website, which you can find at earthed.au. We'll use any funds we receive via our website to cover the costs of things like production, editing, and distribution. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye for now.